Hello, hello! Looking for something productive to do during this very cold week at home? You should study for your GMAT. Today we're going to dive into the most unexciting part of the MBA application, the GMAT exam. As someone who scored a 750 on my GMAT exam back in 2021 with just one try, I can't wait to tell you all the tips and tricks that will help you get there as well. For those of you who are new to this channel, my name is Minnie and I am an MBA alum from MIT Sloan School of Management and have had a global career leading teams in Singapore, Hong Kong, and now in New York. This channel, Coffee with Minnie, is dedicated to higher education, career development, and personal growth. Now, let's talk about GMAT. The GMAT is a standardized test that you can take to apply for one of the top MBA programs here in the US. The other choice is the GRE. For the class of 2027, across all the applicants for Harvard Business School, Stanford Graduate School of Business, as well as Wharton, around 61% of applicants chose to take the GMAT versus the GRE. In my experience, I chose the GMAT because I think it's a lot more practical and more relevant to a business school education versus the GRE, which in my view is a lot more academic and also has a slight focus on vocabulary, which I definitely do not miss since the SAT. The GMAC, which is the Graduate Management Admissions Council, launched a new version of the GMAT exam called the GMAT Focus. And this exam is now only 2 hours and 15 minutes versus the 3+ hour exam that I took back in 2021. And this exam now is on the scale of 205 to 805 points versus the old exam, which is 200 to 800 points. Big change. And the new GMAT Focus now only includes 3 sections: the quantitative section, verbal reasoning, and data insights. You don't have to do sentence correction or geometry or the writing anymore. Yeah! I think the new GMAT Focus exam is much better aligned with the skill sets that you will actually build and the skills that will make you successful in business school. However, because it is a shorter exam, there is actually less room for mistakes. So you must prepare well to score that new 715 on the exam. Now let's dive into my 4-step preparation guide before you take your GMAT Focus exam. Number 1, a self-assessment, but a brutally honest one. By that, I basically mean to take a practice exam without doing any preparation, just to assess where you are in the current state. Trust me, it is likely going to hurt unless you're some exam genius who can still wing it after 5+ years out of undergrad. But that is okay. This is just a very honest first step to help you get there. It is crucial because, in my view, if you don't know where you're starting, you can't really measure how far you are from the finish line. So get an online test, just do that assessment. And number 2, set a study timeline based on your level. Once you've taken your assessment exam, got your score or not, I want you to put yourself in 4 different levels. First level.
Oh my god, I feel so stupid. I could barely get through that exam and I'm just traumatized. I just couldn't finish it.
And if you're at this level, I would recommend 12+ months of studying time to make sure that you can get there. For the second level,
I completely bombed the exam. This score is horrifying. I'm not going to get into any school with this score, but I finished it.
And for this level, likely your score is going to be under 575. And for this group, I would recommend 6 to 8 months of studying time leading up to the exam. Level 3, you probably weren't happy with the overall score. However, if you look at your score for each of the 3 sections, you will notice your strengths and weaknesses starting to show. For this group, your score probably ranged from 575 to 645. This is just a reference guide though. The most important thing is how you felt about the exam and were you able to clearly identify your strengths, weaknesses, and areas that require the most work. In hindsight, when I looked at my journey after I took my practice test, I definitely fell into this group, in this bucket. Finally, level 4. You didn't get a perfect score. Sorry, you can't wing it for an 805. You actually feel pretty good about your result without studying. You probably just need 1 to 2 months to practice and prepare before you get to your dream score. Now that you have your timeline, the 3rd step is what I call start planning and start working. And I think step number one, actually, before you go all out with your study plan, is actually to have a growth mindset. I've heard many stories of people spending months and years preparing for this exam. I don't think I'm the motivational type who will write my motivational statement on my mirror and read it every day to myself when I wake up and before I go to bed. But I will say it is helpful to consciously remind yourself that this is going to be a journey. You have to tackle it, but if you put in the work, put in the time, and have the right plan for it, you're going to get there and you're going to get into your dream school. Now it's time to get to work and be very disciplined. I'll share my personal experience in a little bit to give you some concrete example as to what discipline meant for me. At a very high level, being disciplined means you must dedicate a lot of time doing the learning and the practicing every single week, if not every single day. That means you're gonna hang out with your friends a little less, do less shopping, do less eating out, less social activities, less Netflix and chilling. And I personally think that is actually one of the hardest part about taking any exams, because we're all so far removed from school, and this is something that you just have to do outside of your very busy work schedule, and it is very, very physically and emotionally taxing. And therefore, I will say, instead of doing gymnastics once in a while, consistency is something that is going to help you get there. And the fourth step and the final step is strategize and rest. This probably will come in towards the end of your preparation timeline, and I do think it is very important to understand the exam mechanisms. There are a lot of Reddits that you can read in terms of how the exam works and what are some of the scoring strategy. It's important to understand how it works in case you need to change your course of strategy during the exam. I learned that for each section, your end score actually depends on what scoring percentile and buckets that you land on your last question. The first question that you get in each section is going to be labeled as a medium difficulty question. And once you get it right, your difficulty level will go up. And if you continue to get it right, it will eventually get you to the most difficult question, which will land you in the highest percentile of score at the end of the day. So as you can imagine, if you can raise your range in the beginning, and even if you make mistakes later on, hopefully not continuously, you will likely just stay up. Versus if you get the first couple questions wrong, you're going to have to work your way up back to the high percentile range. As a result, it's important to stay very, very focused in the beginning of the section so that you can sustain yourself more easily later on. In addition to that, make sure you're in your best state physically and mentally on the day of the exam. One thing I learned during my preparation is that it's actually very important for you to sleep well, not only the night before, but actually 2 nights before the exam. For the last couple of days, I just tried to keep my routine and make sure that I got as much rest and as much high quality rest as I could as possible. And finally, on the day of the exam, start with the section that you think you need the most focus on. It doesn't necessarily mean your worst section, but just decide which section would take the most energy. Now, a little bit on my own personal experience. I took the exam in July 2021, and I started the preparation about 4 months before my exam date. And as you remember, I fell into the level 3 bucket where I thought that was the appropriate time that I could dedicate to the exam. So for the first month, I did my assessment test. I did tons of learning from YouTube, from free sources, from online exams that I can get, online tutorial. And I did get actually one of those big GMAT books. I don't know, the weight just makes you feel better. The second month, I started doing more targeted practice and targeted learning. I remember I struggled so much with some of the really difficult quant questions. As an Asian, I am deeply ashamed. I've always thought I was good at math. GMAT is a different beast. So I spent a lot of time on that section. Surprisingly, verbal and sentence and writing, all of that, I was very comfortable with. I just made sure that I did very section-specific practices. Starting this month, I remember actually, I carved out 30 minutes every single day, including weekday, to do practices. And that is just how many ever questions I can get through in those 30 minutes, I will do it. Sometimes it's 9 p.m., sometimes it's 10 p.m. I would have very, very late work days and I was exhausted, but I just had to force myself to do it because that is the consistency I was talking about, and I firmly believe that it was gonna get me where I needed to be. The third month, I actually used some external help to make sure that I fill in the gaps that I couldn't see myself. And that is taking some free online courses. And I actually did a bootcamp course when I was in Hong Kong. And that is 8 hours a day for 2 Saturdays. I just sat there with a coach and a group of other students and went through difficult questions, trick questions, and had a lot of time for Q&A. That was honestly very, very helpful. And a lot of the tips and tricks I shared earlier and how to strategize for the exam, I learned them all from the coach that I had. Finally, the last month, this is a month before the exam, I was in drill mode. I took a practice test. Remember, it was 3.5 hours, but every Saturday I would wake up, I would take the exam, and I will go back to my mistakes and relearn them again. So I probably did 3 to 4 practice tests before I headed into my real test. Focus on the questions, focus on the exam. Don't think about the score, because technically once you start, it's kind of out of your control. This is really how I got to 750 on my GMAT exam for my MBA. To be fair, I do think I got lucky with the just one try, so it doesn't matter how many times you have to try for the exam, just don't lose hope, keep practicing. Using this 4-step guide, remember, I think the most important one being having the growth mindset and be very, very disciplined and finding external help to help you get through that. Remember that you're not alone, so make sure you reach out to any communities you have access to, including my channel, so feel free to reach out to me if you need any guidance or help, but find external help and accountability buddies that will help you get through this journey. Having an external voice and support just makes it so much easier. Hope this is helpful to you. This is a very, very belated GMAT video that I've been meaning to make for many years. Please leave a comment as usual if you have any questions, and remember to subscribe. Good luck on your GMAT, you're gonna crush it, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!